And then that's good. Bro, this summer is going to be insane in terms of what we also got to look forward to.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. It's good year for boxing, and I like it.
Like on every scale, like on the domestic scale, on the global scale, it's just been insane.
There's a lot going on.
Just give me 1 sec, sorry.
No worries, bro.
Okay. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Ringside Fracas. Today I'm joined by someone that was on the pod. He's always in and around boxing. He's beaten me up quite a few times in boxing as well. I've got Sebi. Sebi, how are you, bro?
I'm good, bro. I'm good, bro. Yeah, man. It's been a long time. I think I feel like I've only been on maybe like 2 or 3 pods since the inception of Ringside Fracas. Just due to like work commitments and being super busy. But I have like a few minutes spare, so I definitely wanted to join on this pod.
Now you've been there since day one, and you've always been, especially your boxing knowledge. When it comes to, I know the bigger fights, you're always into it a lot, and you know a lot. You know your boxing a lot as well. But this episode's a bit different. It's different from what we've been doing recently. We always have our weekly episodes, but we've had some time, and we thought, well, the first 3 months of 2024 is over. Let's have a review of boxing, because I felt like we started this pod. I felt that this year has even been better than last year, and last year we were kind of amazed and excited by what we were getting, but this year just seems like we've been going even further, and it's just like I said, on both scales, on the domestic and on the global scale, it seems like boxing just keeps improving, and we're getting the fights we want. We're getting more competitive fights, and we're getting anything and everything that we really wanted to. What have your thoughts been overall as these months have been going by about boxing?
Yeah, totally echo everything you said. I think we're getting big fights. I think, do you know what's interesting? As you speak, and as we obviously kind of look at last year and look at the first 3 months of this year and how boxing is kind of started on fire, you start to think about boxing kind of turning into like UFC, right?
Yeah.
It's becoming more like UFC orientated, where the big fights are happening. There's no problems with like money now because of obviously the Saudi connection, but also domestically, I think that's even starting well, which is really, really cool. I think promoters working with each other, it's been amazing. Like rival promoters working with each other here in the UK has been amazing for boxing, and actually it just goes to show how deprived and how maybe petty some of the beefs and some of the arguments before were, right? So yeah, it's started off amazing this year, and long may it continue.
Yeah, perfectly well said. And for this special episode as well, we've got Aham joining us. Aham, how are you, bro?
Good, man. How's everyone? Everyone good? Everyone good?
Yeah, we've been good, bro. Like I said, it's a special episode, and you're a big boxing fan as well. So I wanted to get your sort of takes on how the year's been going. And like I said, it's the first quarter review. You know, like businesses do their first quarter review. This is our first quarter review of the boxing business and how it's been.
It's been a good start. I can't lie. It's been some big notable fights so far. Obviously there's a lot more to come, but so it's a welcome change. Obviously last year was amazing as well, but hopefully this year will be even better. Obviously we've got a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about. And Sebi, what you said about the whole promotion stuff, let me get into that first before we start into the get into the months. That's been one of the kind of key differences in these last 2 years, hasn't it? Is where you've seen before promoters and promotions and networks, they would kind of argue and they'd have their politics, and we wouldn't get the biggest fights that we want to see. But then last year we had the introduction of the Saudis coming in and basically saying, look, there's all this money on the line. Come and take this money. We want to work with you. We want to make the big fights. They've been mainly focused on the heavyweight fights, but they've also been making smaller fights, and now they're kind of focusing on more. They're making their reach a bit broader in terms of the weight divisions that they're trying to affect and make the big fights happening. It's been amazing to see, because for a while we've been on this pod, we've been arguing, saying that, you know, these big fights should happen, these promotions should get out of the way of each other, and they should just work together. Now they're kind of doing it. Who would have thought that, you know, in 2024 you would have seen Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren shaking hands on a deal to make a 5v5 card? Like, that's just insane to think about, that we're going to get a card like that, and then to think we're getting certain fights that we want to see, that you know, we want to, you know, for example, Fury and Usyk. That was a fight last year that was, you know, struggling to get over the line. There was all this topic of who's going to do it, how is it going to get done. Now it just seems like we've just accepted it, that's going to happen. No one's really questioning it. Obviously, there are certain postponements regarding Fury Usyk that we have to talk about, but it's just been amazing to see how, like you said, we've seen these politics kind of wash away when money gets involved, when the big money gets involved, and it really doesn't matter. And now I think going forward, boxing has been changed forever, that we are going to see more cross promotion fights, and if they don't, you either get with the program or you get left out, and if you get left out, you're going to be left way behind. So it's been really interesting to see. What was your thoughts been of it, Sebi, when you've seen this sort of change, this shift?
It's good, man. It's good. I think for a long time, people were scared to take risks, or they wanted to take calculated risks, right? And that's where the kind of money has really, really helped, because I think people are like, you know what, I'm getting paid big for this big fight. If I lose, fuck it, at least I'm comfortable, right? And I think that's basically the mentality now, and that's what Saudi has enabled. I think I always call it like the Mayweather syndrome. I call it sometimes when people are boxing, but also the scared to take an L, scared to lose my O, the A side, this side of the street, I'm worth this amount of money, etc. No risks. I need to keep, like, all of that stuff in boxing. I think, like, again, the Saudis are kind of coming in and saying, mate, look, this is enough money where if you do take the L, you're going to be okay. But also, if you put on a good show, you can come back again and fight on the Saudi card. And we've seen that with boxers that have lost. They have got a chance to work their way back up, right? And potentially either challenge for a world title or get another payday. And I think, you know, as well as, you know, making history, people are in the game to make money. A prime example of this would be Joseph Parker, right? A guy kind of dead and buried. You know, when the Saudis put him in against, you know, Wilder, personally, I thought, you know, it was an interesting matchup. I gave Wilder the edge, but, you know, Parker's totally turned his career around because he's taken a risk. He was happy to take, you know, if he took the L, it would have been fine. He would have come back again, but he's worked his way up. People are now calling for Joseph Parker to have big fights. He's making a lot of money, and it's really, really interesting. So, yeah, again, like, long may it continue.
Yeah, and we've seen other fighters who normally typically wouldn't be as active, like Joseph Parker himself, fighting 4 times in a year, and then fighting Zhilei Zhang straight after in March, which we'll get onto. But we've also seen guys like, you know, Anthony Joshua, for example, who notoriously in the last couple of years, when he had the whole Usyk stuff, and obviously Ruiz, that it was like one fight a year or 2 fights a year, and then last year and in these last 12 months just picked the pace up and just went 4 fights at it and really picked up his work. And it shows in boxing, because he's one of the guys that you talk about in boxing. He's one of the guys that, you know, he gets people talking, and you've seen that the sport's been in a better kind of light. Aham, what's been your kind of experience seeing these kind of shifts and seeing more these movements happening now in boxing?
Yeah, obviously Saudi's obviously changed the game. Obviously the money is just way too much for anyone to say no nowadays. So, for example, we're looking at Fury Usyk like a year or 2 ago. We're looking at this guy not even taking a like 70-30 split. Like, we're looking at that now with the Saudi money, all that's here. Obviously now it's just the money's just too good to say no. Obviously, if it's whether it's good in the long term, that's a different concern. But for the short term for us, it's obviously really good. We've seen a lot of fighters that will fight. Obviously, we're gonna get Beterbiev, Bivol as well. And obviously Usyk and Fury very soon. We've had Joshua Ngannou. We had in December. I know it's obviously not 2024, but the back end of last year we had Wilder, Wilder Parker, obviously, AJ, all fighting on the same card. So, like, this stuff doesn't happen very often. Obviously, I think you guys were touching on earlier the Matchroom, Queensbury, obviously the 5-on-5. Imagine saying that a couple of years ago. That's unimaginable, to be honest. But so far it's going well. Obviously, a lot of notable fighters have also fought, even without the Saudi. Like, for example, Beterbiev has fought, Tiafima's fought as well. So a lot to come. But yeah, we'll get onto it.
Yeah, and that's a perfect way to segue into kind of the year. Let's start looking at the year, the months that have followed by. So obviously we'll go in chronological order. So obviously in January, what a way to start the year, because in the last 2 years, the one title fight that we've always had starting the year has always been Artur Beterbiev taking on a British contender. Last year was Beterbiev Yard, which me and you, Arham, we went to, and what a fight that was to watch. And then this year was Beterbiev and Callum Smith, which was, billed as the fight between two monster knockout punchers. We're gonna get fireworks. This was going to be amazing, and it was a performance in what I thought was just Beterbiev showing his class. Really outboxed Callum Smith, outpowered him, outclassed him, outgunned him, outmaneuvered him, out anything. Just think of the word, and Artur Beterbiev outdid him in that department. He outjabbed him, even despite being the smaller guy. He really pressured him. He boxed much better. His footwork was better, and he just really stuck it to Callum Smith and proved that Callum Smith was nowhere near his level. Despite, if you remember in the build-up, a lot of Brits were saying Callum Smith could do it. Arthur's weak. He's vulnerable. He can get dropped, and he just put on in my opinion, a punch perfect performance and really stuck it on him and took him out in 7 rounds. And I just wanted to get your overall thoughts on that fight itself, what the performance from Beterbiev was like. Obviously, Arham, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think the fight went similar to how I expected. I expected Callum Smith. I didn't expect him to get as beat up as he did, but it was quite clear Beterbiev on the back foot, on the front foot. He overpowered him way too much. And obviously, one thing with Beterbiev is when he comes at you, the aggression doesn't stop. The aggression, like, it's constant. So having someone like Callum Smith, who, for example, we all know Callum Smith, we have a lot of opinions on him as a fighter, but he doesn't get dropped. Yeah, he doesn't get knocked down. But Beterbiev, like, he just overpowered him, and the pressure was so much, he just couldn't take it anymore. So in terms of Beterbiev, obviously, like, to beat, like, for example, he himself he's in comparison to Callum Smith is very, like, his footwork isn't the best, Beterbiev, he can go on the inside, he can go on the outside, but when he goes on the front foot, it's almost impossible to stop. And even someone who's not been knocked down in his career up till then, as fell short. So yeah, amazing fighter. He's got amazing longevity as well, and hopefully he can carry on for a few more years.
Yeah, and like we said, it seems like it's building up into a bigger fight in the summer. Sebi, how did you find that performance from Artur Beterbiev and also Callum Smith? What did you think about that whole fight?
Yeah, I think just echoing the thoughts, man. I think Beterbiev too strong, too well cultured, has a very, very solid base, hits too hard. It's just everything is better than Callum Smith, right? And I think when I look at Callum Smith, I remember back in the days, man, I was a massive Callum Smith fan. In fact, I called he'd be a world champion super, super early, right? And I look at his career and what he's gone on to do. And I think, from one hand, you say, okay, where you've started, when you look at all your brothers, etc., whatever, you've done fairly well. But the way how he started, I feel I'm kind of disappointed of how it's looking, how his career is maybe looking to end or looking to tail off. I think he could have been way better. I think he was way better than all of his brothers. And very disappointed that he's even, at this stage of his career, which I feel like he still has a lot left, that he just let Beterbiev have his way, right? Especially spitting out jabs, that shouldn't be happening, man. Like, it shouldn't be happening. And I just think it's all credit to Beterbiev, but I'm quite disappointed with how Callum Smith's career kind of is turning out right now.
No, I agree. I think after Canelo kind of left a bitter taste in everyone's mouth because he didn't really put up much of a performance in that fight, and he kind of let that fight sort of drift after a certain while. Um, and then afterwards, he kind of did try to build himself back at light heavyweight, where he got those two big knockouts on those big cards. But then he had this long kind of layoff, which didn't do much for his career and didn't do much for his profile. Where if he filled in with a couple fights, he would have benefited much more rather than just going into a fight with Beterbiev off of, I think it was like 16 months layoff, which is insane to do that against a guy, a pound for pound level fighter like Artur Beterbiev, which, like you say, it's a bit disappointing because now, especially when you look at his kind of reaction to that loss, it's kind of now he's in that kind of money making mode where it's like, okay, I've kind of gotten beaten up and now it's like, let me just try to find the biggest fights possible. But I'm not going to try to get myself back with a comeback fight and then try to build again. It's just, let's see what's on the line, because that's that, you know, they've been talking about him versus Anthony Yard. Before last year, there was talks about him and Joshua Buatsi, which I'm sure they might revisit at some point. So yeah, you're right. It does seem like someone who's had a lot of potential. He has reached a lot in the sport. Doesn't seem like he's going to end it well in the way that you would think that someone of his caliber is able to do. But at least from that Beterbiev fight, there were rumors that we were going to get the kind of Bivol fight, that it should have been next, because obviously Bivol fought, I think, was like 2 or 3 weeks before that, against Lyndon Arthur on the Saudi card with AJ and everything. And so the timelines kind of matched up. They were both ready, you know, they were both kind of had a fight at similar times. And now it does seem like we're eventually going to get Artur Beterbiev versus Dimitri Bivol in June, which we're going to do a separate pod on that whole card, because that card just looks like a monster stack card, which just keeps showing you how good boxing this year has been. So yeah, I mean, Beterbiev just showing again why he is 20-0, 20 knockouts, the biggest puncher. He is, for me, the biggest puncher right now in boxing. Like, there's no one that can, and he's the best pressure fighter we've had in. You could put him up there with one of the best pressure fighters ever. Like, he's up there. He really is up there. He's made himself that claim. And I can't wait to see how the next chapter of his career goes, because it's a big chapter to close next for him. But moving on into the last part of the month, we had Jaime Munguia taking on John Ryder, which was a former Canelo opponent. Obviously, John Ryder fought Canelo last and lasted the distance. Munguia really beat the brakes off of him and stopped him in 9 rounds, and sets up the fight for Canelo versus Munguia in May, which again, when we come closer to the date, we'll do a big preview pod on that. What were your thoughts? Because with Munguia, I've always had this thing where he's very young, but he's followed that kind of career path where Canelo career path, where he started young, but he had like so many fights in Mexico, and then now he's on like 40 plus pro fights. He won a world title against Saddam Ali, and then he beat Liam Smith when he was like only 21. And then in the 4 or 5 years afterwards, his career kind of went down. He wasn't really fighting anyone at middleweight, and then he's moved up to super middleweight, fought Sergey Derenchenko. Tough fight that was. He really got pushed really hard in that fight. Like, he was struggling a bit in that fight. So coming into the Ryder fight, they were kind of looking for a statement, because they were always pushing for that Canelo fight, and he made a statement. He did something that Canelo couldn't do. He stopped Ryder and made him look like he didn't belong in there. Sebi, what were your thoughts on Munguia as a whole, as a fighter, and then now that he's now done this to Ryder, him pushing into this sort of Canelo business? You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I always thought Munguia was talented, but I wasn't too sure, right? And I think one thing sometimes people do, including myself, is you buy into the Eddie Hearn marketing train. Yeah, and Eddie Hearn, and to be fair, John Ryder had put in like a few performances where you're like, oh, he's got that dog, like he's a handful. So, you know, in my, like, when I was seeing that matchup, I was like, okay, this is going to be an actual test, and I expect John Ryder not to win, but to offer some problems and to actually make it kind of competitive. Especially when I look at like the Canelo fight and the heart that he displayed there, and how he was able to, when he got comfortable, to actually, trade shots with Canelo and have some success. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting, right? And as I said, like, I thought Munguia was talented, but wasn't too sure how talented. But, when I saw like the way he kind of dispatched Munguia, I was like, okay, I mean, of John Ryder, I'm like, okay, like I'm kind of like believing in the hype, and I think you know I think he has a real chance against Canelo. I wouldn't put like my money on him, but I feel like he has like a real chance against Canelo, and I think it will be a very competitive fight because sometimes when it comes to Father Time. And not to say Canelo is old, but he's had a lot of fights and he's been boxing from, he's been boxing young, similar in like Mexico, had a record, before he fought Floyd and super early. But you never know when some of the things that has been in your arsenal leaves. And I think this could potentially be, one of those banana pills where Canelo might be trending downwards and Munguia might be trending upwards, and that's why I feel like it'll be an interesting fight, and maybe an upset could happen.
Yeah, perfectly well said. Aham, your thoughts on Munguia?
I think he's someone that I've not really expected much from throughout his career. Like, I think that in general, I never thought he'd be in a position where I'll be looking at him trying to compete with Canelo and seeing where he actually has sort of a fighting chance. Obviously, I'm not gonna put my bets on him, but the way he beat up Ryder was kind of, for me, unexpected, because Ryder's someone, to get him out of there, it's not the easiest thing to do, like to actually, because he's someone who, like, even when he's losing the fight, we saw against Canelo, like, to actually get him out of the ring, it's not easy, and to get him in 9 rounds, yeah, that was an impressive performance. But I think with Canelo starting to show signs of decline, I think Munguia is still quite young. I think he's still around just under 30, maybe. I think.
Yeah, he's like 26.
Yeah. So I think speed might be on his side as well in that fight. So I'm
27.
hoping he can. I think he'll be competitive. But I think Canelo still has the edge. But against Ryder, he did something I didn't expect him to do, because he got rid of him in 9 rounds. And to be honest, it was a very dominant performance. So yeah, onwards and upwards for him at least.
Yeah, I thought on paper they matched it very well, and you could tell with the Ryder stuff, because for a Canelo opponent, it made sense kind of to do that storyline of we can build into a Canelo fight, and we're getting that Canelo fight in May, which is the second best fight possible for Canelo outside of Benavidez. Like it's a very competitive fight. Like Sebi said, it's it's competitive. It's interesting to see how much Canelo has left and what can Ryder really do to push Canelo and see if he can definitely try to beat him. So yeah. 100%. And January in general was good. You also had obviously the Natasha Jonas and Michaela Mayer fight, which was brilliant. I mean, I think that was a good fight that happened as well on Boxer's card. But the next Boxer card that we need to go over is it happens in February. In the month of February, we started off well. We get Joshua Buatsi taking on Dan Azeez, which was a very good fight. I enjoyed that fight, watching it live. And then you always could tell that fight was always going to light up. It was always going to be a good fight to watch. Sebi, what was your thoughts on watching Joshua Buatsi and Dan Azeez?
Yeah, I think it was a really, really good fight. Really, really competitive. I think I always knew, Buatsi was going to win, but it was interesting. I remember maybe post fight, Buatsi talking about like Azeez upped his levels, in that fight, and you can see like he was battling. He was really, really battling. But again, the technical aspect of Joshua Buatsi is so clean, is so cultured that I think he was just better than Azeez in every department. And I feel like Azeez done well and had heart to kind of stay in there. I do feel like, I don't know if it was the 12th round. I think it might have been the 12th round or the 11th round. I think it was the 12th round that Buatsi could have taken Azeez out of there and didn't on purpose. Right, I genuinely felt like he allowed him because he wanted both of them to see the belt, which is cool. It is what it is, and also they're both boys as well. So I wasn't really buying the build up or whatever, but I'm just happy that it ended up being like a good fight, a competitive fight, and another good boxer card. Well, no, I wouldn't say another good boxer card, but maybe the start of good boxer cards going forward.
Yeah. Aham, your thoughts on Buatsi and Azeez?
Yeah, well, it was actually a really good fight. It was right to the end. These lot were going at it. I think in the end, Buatsi was quite clearly the better fighter. I think. What was it? I think Thank you. I think I gave. I didn't think I gave many rounds at all to Azeez anyway. So I think yeah, it was. I like it went to points. I thought like as well. He could have maybe got Azeez out of there. He started gassing a bit towards the end. He could have maybe got him, but at the end of the day, I didn't really like. It was dominant, to be honest. As much as it was a really good fight, I thought Buatsi was just a level ahead of Dan Azeez. I think, especially technically. I think. Um, but yeah, I didn't give many rounds at all to Azeez that fight. But Buatsi, even when like the pressure was on him, he still won most rounds. So it's good. It was a good fight for him. Hopefully, he can actually push on a bit now because it's been a long time. It's been a lot of potential he has to actually give us something. But let's see what he gives us.
Yeah, and it was a fight where both guys didn't kind of lose stock because Azeez, we also still want to see. There's so many other British light heavyweights out there that you could take on the domestic level that it will be fun to watch. But now that you're both here and we're on this sort of Buatsi Azeez topic, I know you both have a vested interest in this next thing. Buatsi Yard, what are we saying? What do we think? Because Yard made his comeback also in February, obviously taking out Marko Nikolic in 3 rounds. So the timelines kind of matched. They both fought in February within 1 week of each other. Sebi, I'll come to you first. What are we saying about Buatsi and Yard?
Yeah, I think that fight has to happen next, right? I think it's difficult because like the fight will happen because it's going to be a big fight and it's going to be a big domestic fight, right? But what I've seen, so when I look at the both of them, I see as like somebody who's tried to trend upwards. I think the ambition of Yard, right, and this is not a disrespectful comment, probably doesn't match his ability, right? So the ambition of you, and it's not about, it is about his ability, but it's more about the current state of world champions. The current state of world champions and the very top fighters that he has fought are all-timers. They're all-timers. Unfortunately for you, you've got the best of the best in the light heavyweight division, right? It's not, I don't know, 5-6 years ago where it was a bit shaky or whatever. You have Beterbiev as an all-timer. You fought Kovalev, which was on the slide, but is an all-timer. Nobody can say anything about Kovalev or whatever. So when he has stepped up, he's fought against, all-timers, right? Now, I look at this and I say, okay, you've stepped up, you've kind of just you've fallen short. Do you go back to domestic level? Like, do you go back to like where is your fall from grace? Like, where do you land? Do you land at European? Do you land at fringe world level? Do you try have a few fights at fringe world level and then try to go fight another world title? Obviously, the world titles are going to be kind of occupied for a couple fights or whatever. But he's probably looking at it as like, listen, I'm fringe world level. You, right, are domestic/European. Right. So I feel like he's looking at the team, in my opinion, are kind of looking at that and saying, whoa, that needs to be reflected in, the whole, the business side of this fight. Because for me to come down to domestic level is a massive risk, right? If I lose, it's a massive risk. Where do I go from there if I lose to fucking Buatsi? I don't know what happens, right, if he loses to Buatsi. So I think that's maybe an issue on my side. But when I look at the fight anyway, and we take the business side apart, I think it's quite equal, right? I think technically Joshua Buatsi is better than Anthony Yard. And this is something I know, and we're cool or whatever. But I think Anthony Yard is more battle tested, has way more power, and maybe has way more power and has maybe the natural ability that you can't teach, right? If I'm going to teach a boxer, I'd say, look at Joshua Buatsi, not his career, but I'd be like, look at the way he throws punches, look at his body shape, like his guard, etc. Very technically clean. Whereas I think Anthony is very naturally gifted, and those are things that you're just kind of born with, right? And I think maybe because of the experience Anthony Yard has in the ring, and it would be 55-45% in Ant's favor, right? But I don't think there is a clear gap, and I don't think it's as easy as just picking, oh, this person is going to win, or this person is going to, 100%, destroy the alpha. Because again, on the flip side, Buatsi's been 12 rounds slugger with Craig Richards and Azeez, something that Anthony Yard hasn't done. He hasn't been in a 12-round slugger where it's been kind of a 50-50 or 45-55 fight, and you're going at it for 12 rounds. That's another thing, right? So I don't know if Ant has that. And Ant's biggest win would be Lyndon Arthur, right? So yeah, I think it's 55-45. I do think, you know, Yard would win, but I think it would be ultra competitive. And I do think there'd be, in my opinion, for Ant to really like to win, or for me to have some confidence, there would be like slight tweaks to things that he currently does, but for me to be ultra comfortable with saying, yeah, this guy will win.
You know that's perfectly well said. You know what's eerily similar, and I just realized this going through my head. The Wardley-Clark fight has a similar background to this Buatsi Yard fight, because remember, Fabio Wardley and Anthony Yard haven't had loads of amateur fights. Obviously, Wardley was a semi-pro white-collar boxer, and Anthony Yard only had, I think it was like double digits fights, like 15. Like, he didn't have a lot of amateur fights. And then they went straight into the pro scene. And both Wardley and Yard have shown much more ambition when it comes to their pro career by fighting on higher level opponents than the guys who in Clark and what's his name, Buatsi, who've had the elite amateur standing and, you know, the elite amateur background. They haven't had the same ambition as well. And we saw with Woodley and Clark how kind of 50-50 and how kind of, how competitive that bout was. I mean, it was a draw, which I feel like the same thing you could apply here, where you don't know what could happen. The guy with the elite amateur standing doesn't always have to be the guy that's always going to win, because, Anthony Yard is a fighter, he's a warrior, but he's also very athletic as hell. Aham, what's your kind of take on Buatsi and Yard?
I think it's very, very 50-50 this fight, because I think the styles, they kind of match up quite well. I think Anthony Yard is physically superior. I think that's pretty clear. I think he's got more power. He's more explosive, I'd say. But I think Buatsi is also more. If like, for example, if the fight goes deep, I would kind of back Buatsi. But if it goes deep, that's the thing. Because for me, I think he's better on the back foot. But Yard, for example, I think in the early rounds, I think will come out a lot stronger than what Buatsi would come out with. But I think Yard, I think at the moment, I think there is no choice for him than to go back to Buatsi. It's a very risky fight for him, because I think if he does lose, there's a lot to lose, because obviously he's fought the best in the division. Obviously, he hasn't fought some notable fighters, but he's fought Beterbiev. I think last January actually, and he fought Kovalev a few years ago. So he's fought the giants, but at the same time, a Buatsi hard fight, it sells. It really sells, because it's a very, very it's a very evenly matched fight. But I think I'd give it around. It's very 50-50, but if you're gonna edge someone, I think you have to give Yard experience, power, etc. I think that's a big thing. But I think if it does go deep, I think Buatsi has a very good chance as well.
Yeah, it's one of those fights that we kind of want to see happen, isn't it? It would get all of London talking, especially because them two have got big decent fan bases out in London. You put that on in the O2, you're definitely getting it sold out. So we can hope it happens, but yeah, that's a fight that I'm interested to see, and it's it's one of those ones that it's kind of like it's 50, like you say, 50-50, and each fighter has their own kind of advantage going into that fight. So it would be remiss if the promoters and the fighters themselves didn't put that on. So hopefully we can get that fight in the summer, because that's kind of what we're hoping to hear from. But on that in that same month, sorry, we also had, because I kind of want to get this out of the way, because I've given my take on it, and I want to get your two take on it. Obviously, on the undercard for that Joshua Buatsi Azeez fight, you had Ben Whittaker fighting, and Ben Whittaker's had 2 fights in the quarter, so he recently just fought last week. I want to get your thoughts, Aham, on Ben Whittaker. What do you think about Ben Whittaker and the whole showboating and the viral stuff? What do you think?
I mean, to be fair, I think with Ben Whittaker, I think he is a showboater. That's what he does. I think he tries to antagonize all these things. So, like, I get it, but at the same time, me personally, I don't like it personally. I think what was his last fight? What was against Leon Willings, yeah. So I
Yeah,
think
Leon
that
Williams.
like obviously like Leon Willings was very stubborn that fight, but at the same time, Whitaker, he's that kind of like when you showboat and when you literally like when you're front footed as well, in the end you leave yourself a bit open. That's why I don't really like it from him. I don't think he's good enough to be doing all this stuff, me personally. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens next because I think there's not really, I think, a clear pathway for him. But I actually want to see what happens because I think last month, obviously, it was a lot different. So, yeah, what you guys got to say about that?
Sebi, what do you think about Ben Whitaker? What's your take on seeing him fight?
I like Ben. It's me and Dr. Lee have been watching Ben since he was like an amateur, right? And I've definitely had stocks in him super early. Now, one of the key things, and this is a thing that we both echoed, is we had massive stocks as an amateur, but as a pro, you have to make sure that you got power, right? You got to take people out, right? And he's stopped, most of his opponents, if not all of his opponents, if I remember correctly. But I don't feel like he has devastating power. Now, the reason why I mention that is the British public will forgive you for showboating if you have highlight reel knockouts, right? Or if you are in some fights, you're coming out, you're just smashing people up. In other fights, it's the type of showboating as well, right? It's like if you tone it down a little bit, right, and you're getting convincing wins against higher opposition, then I think you could be forgiven, right? But then also, I feel like they can then box you abroad in like America, where these things are probably a bit more like welcomed versus like Brits, because Brits as people like are very reserved, right? So anything that's a bit too brash that's in your face is always going to get a negative reaction. Now, I don't think Ben cares about that negative reaction, but the reason why he doesn't care is because, again, Mayweather syndrome is Mayweather built his career so well where people just tuned in to watch him lose, right? I don't think life is like that now. People just won't tune in, right? Do you know what I'm trying to say? So I don't think people are going to tune in to watch you lose. I think people are just not going to tune in, right? So I think he has to decide, okay, if I'm going to showboat, where am I going to do this? The type of opposition that I'm doing and the type of showboating, like the spinning around shit is unnecessary. Like if you're in a ring and someone tries to swing and he's missed and you did that little Mayweather thing or whatever, that's perfectly fine where someone's missed a punch or whatever. But spinning around, doing the tap thing on the head is a bit whack. It's not great. But also doing that consistently in the fight, it then becomes a bit cheesy. It comes a bit cheesy. Like Mayweather, even though these people are trying to be Mayweather, did not do it, every bloody round, mate. Like he was locked in. It was locked in, and it was convincing. And it might be 1 second of a round, and it would be at the very highest level as well, right? And I think that's obviously the difference. And you can say he's trying to be Prince Nassim or whatever. That's fine, but again, it was a different time, a very very different time. So I think he just needs to know his audience. He needs to know like he as well as now, you need to think about future proofing. But I say all that to say that fight went super viral. It had so many impressions, Americans watching it. He had people split or whatever. So maybe it's working or whatever. But in my personal opinion, I think you just tone it down a little bit. And I'm still not convinced that his talent is going to translate into the pros if the power level doesn't start to show.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Dapo says the showboating needs to stop, man. It stinks. And he says he completely agrees with Seb. He needs to focus on great performances rather than doing all this showboating. Yeah, and the whole Prince Nassim stuff, when they compared to him, you have to also remember when Prince Nassim first started, whenever these prospects also first start, they have a lot of fights in between. So like Prince Haseem, I'm looking at it now, in his first 2 whole years of the sport, so from February 1992 till February till April, basically 1994, he's had 11 fights, and in those 11 fights, he's had 10 knockouts. So he's given something for the fans to latch onto because there's loads of fights for them to watch. And then in May 1994, in his 12th fight, he fought for the European bantamweight title. So already they pushed him to such a level. My thing's always been with the matchmakers being quite slow and against guys that are not really going to do much well for him. But also, he has the issue of his body where he's quite injured a lot. So when he first was meant to make his pro debut after the 2021 Olympics, he was injured for quite a bit. So then he made it in 2022. And then in the Usyk, he was on the AJ Usyk undercard for the second fight, got injured there. So they pushed his fight back even further. So already he's having so many injuries that he's having to do, and it's pushing his fights back. It's hard for fans, like you said, to get invested into. And the whole Mayweather point, when Mayweather was coming up, he wasn't interested in being a character. He was getting guys out of there. Like, he was one of the best super featherweights ever. Before he got in any big fights, he established himself as one of the best super featherweights ever by knocking guys out. Pretty Boy Floyd was a phenom. The guy was just beating guys up, and there was no showboating, nothing. He was just much better than his opponents, and he was just showing that. I think that's kind of like you say, it's kind of lost on fighters nowadays, where they kind of want to do the Money Mayweather part of, let me get people hating me, let me get people talking, rather than talking in the better way, which is get guys to knock you out, which is And I've like you, Sebi, I've had stocks in him since the Olympics as well. But it's like I still have the stocks, but it's like I just need him to switch on and focus, because he's doing okay, fair enough. You can do the whole rapping and making your own music videos and whatnot, and you got guys like Sate who will back you to the end for doing that and whatnot. But we need to lock in, because you're in like you said about the Buatsi Azeez stuff. You're in a division where 2 of the guys at the top are all timers. If you ever face them, you want to be the old timer that beats them. You want to have that type of performance. So, and he's got the kind of pedigree to do so. He's athletic. He's 6 foot. He's got long limbs, so he can translate the power. But for some reason, it's just not there. I feel like we see that a lot of times with Team GB guys, where they don't know how to turn over their punches as much and get the power in their shots when they turn pro. I think that's going to be a big issue for him.
Also, two things on that. It's just on that PowerPoint. It's sometimes you're just not gifted with everything, right? And that's unfortunate, right? Sometimes you can have everything but power, right? And we've seen that with Devin Haney. But you can make a career for yourself if you lock in, right? And you build an audience and you take tough fights. You can be a Devin Haney who doesn't have the power, but now people are tuning in to watch him fight, right? So I think that's interesting. And then another thing is that I should have mentioned is at this point of his career, it's where you really build your fan base, but also it's where you learn your craft. So if you're showboating and the fights are too easy, you're obviously not going to be a match well, right? You should be learning your craft, right? And building up your record. It's either you're going in there and you're knocking people straight out and it's just business. Like most of the time, like Tuma is going in and he's looking to take your head off. He's trying to take your head off all the time, but also learn his craft. If I'm matched, I need to take you out ASAP. If I'm matched horribly, I need to take you out ASAP, right? Or you match him well and he learns, right? It's either the two. We can't be spinning around and taking people into the middle rounds or whatever if it's an easy fight. That's just unnecessary because you're not learning. And as you mentioned, they're all timers at the top of his weight division, right? And you need to have these people in your future, bro. You need to see, like, you know what, one day, if these people are still around, they might be old, but I might be ticking them off my list, right? When Usyk said he's had Fury on his wall from when he beat Klitschko, right? That's elite mentality. It's like, I've been looking at my man since Klitschko, right? And again, Ben Whittaker got to be looking at the people at the top of his division and saying, all right, cool. If they're still around, I need to be learning now. I need to be preparing right now. This is where I do all the preparation for eventually when I get there, right? And I'll be ready, right? So, yeah, all that spinning around shit has to stop.
Yeah, perfectly well said. I think Hopefully we do get to see him more active this year, because he's already had 2 fights in these 3 months. So that's good. That's a good sign that they are kind of getting him active. But again, we need to keep it going and make sure that, you know, he's got the right development, and because he's got a bright future. Let me come on to March, because I know March is a big contention topic, because there's one big fight that I think we all want to talk about. I watched it with you. Anthony Joshua knocking out Ngannou in 2 rounds. I mean, when we watched it, all your friends are around, and your friends were kind of in and out of boxing. They weren't like the biggest boxing fans, but obviously they watched Anthony Joshua and whatnot. It was one of those performances where it was like everyone kind of got up off their seat. Like everyone was kind of screaming about it. What was your kind of take about that?
I can't lie. To knock out Francis Ngannou that early, it is not easy. It is not easy. This guy does not go down. We're watching him for years and years in UFC. This guy, I know obviously he's not fighting against the level in terms of striking as he does in boxing, but at the same time, to get him out of there and to get him out that early, crazy stuff. And I think AJ, he looks locked in, you know, he looks locked in, and at the same time, we've got all this. His career has gone a certain way. So obviously, at the beginning, after Olympics and whatnot, he was just getting everyone out of there. He was just a couple of rounds, bang. Then obviously he started fighting the top guys, and he had to improve his back foot game. So he improved a lot on his fundamentals, etc. And now, obviously, he had a bit of a identity crisis of sorts, you know. So, but now it looks like the best thing he did was going to you know who. Yeah, the best thing that he did recently, because oh my days, the chick that he looks so locked in, he looks ready, he looks hungry, and if he can combine that power with the fundamentals that he has against the likes of, hopefully the likes of whether it's Usyk or Fury that he fights, or obviously he probably will fight Hrgovic next and whatnot, but like in general, I like to, even when we were watching it, obviously we were gassed like when he did what he did, when he knocked him out. Obviously, especially when Ngannou fell, his legs were just moving, his legs were moving all over the place. So, but yeah, he looks locked in, which is only good, man. Because I did fear what was going to happen after the second Usyk fight.
Yeah, perfectly said. And Sebi, we haven't had a chance to fully grasp your thoughts about AJ Ngannou. What were your thoughts about that?
Yeah, this is last before I just need to quickly shoot off. But yeah, man, really good. Really impressive AJ. Really impressive AJ. So when we're doing predictions, I've been saying, and I put like Ngannou or whatever on the prediction, or just because, not because I think Ngannou's good, but I just felt like, you know, heavyweight boxing, or any heavyweight or any big guy, if they hit you, it's just 50-50 in it. So it was just like one of those long shots, like 100-1. I felt like he could like upset something or whatever. But you know, when you kind of break down striking, punching in MMA versus boxing, Ngannou's never been hit properly, right? He's never been hit properly. So when MMA fans, or when people are like, oh no, Ngannou is this, I get it, because it's like, if you kind of take Ngannou, you say, you put him in a street fight, you say, oh yeah, like this guy can never get knocked out in a street fight. That's how like the MMA punches are like. They're like, oh, street fight punches. You're right. We're in a street fight. He's got to chill for that. But in regards to measured punching, straight power with all your hits, all your rotation, your whole body behind the punch, he's probably never felt that, right? And from a person that hits as hard as AJ and is as big as AJ, right? So, yeah, I felt, and I kind of said that also. I remember saying that when Mayweather first fought Conor McGregor, when I was having them arguments with Conor McGregor fans, and I was like, listen, he's never been hit properly. Like it's a different type of striking. Everything is just very different. But I like you both, I am very surprised that AJ managed to dispatch of him super early. And I think Ngannou believed in his own hype a little bit, right? Because I think the Fury fight was an inflation of his actual ability, right? You get a fight in Fury, which is just trying to collect a bag, barely probably trained for it, and got caught slipping. And at the very top level of athleticism, right, or if you're an athlete, right, so at the very top level, regardless if it's their first fight or if it's their second fight, somebody can give you problems, or if they're super athletic and you decide to go on a binge for 6 weeks, right? It's gonna happen. They could cause you a bit of issues or whatever. We kind of saw that. But yeah, AJ again takes his craft very, very serious. So, and I think the biggest thing for AJ, and I've always said it, was mentality, but also the fact that he's now punching through the target, right? It used to piss me off, bro, and he did that, he was doing it with Frank, he was doing it even with Hellenius, right, where he's using his right hand as a jab from an orthodox position. And the reason why I say that is he's not punching through the target, he's just landing the right hand. He's not throwing the right hand with any authority. It's just like, oh, I'm gonna hit you with this right hand, but there's no body behind it, and it's just because he don't want to get hit back. He don't want to commit. He was not committing to the right hand, and it was just pissing me off. And it allowed like people to think, oh, maybe AJ's lost his power, maybe AJ isn't the same. But everything was all mentality. Everything was all commitment. Right, and now we're seeing he's committing with punches. He's throwing them with venom. He's an actual problem. He's one of the hardest hitters in the division, right? And he needs to start believing he's one of the hardest hitters in the division. And yeah, glad that we were able to dispatch of Wilder. Able to dispatch of Francis, and he just seems like he's on and up. He's got his confidence, and hopefully, he goes on. Fights for a world title, fights whether it's Hrgovic or whether it's the undisputed, probably be Hrgovic or probably the winner of Hrgovic or somebody else or whatever, and gets himself, and becomes 3-time champion. Because when it's all said and done, and you look at AJ's career with the limited amateur experience, starting boxing fairly late, wasn't really brought into boxing or whatever, he will go down as one of the best British fighters ever because he fought everybody, right? He fought everybody, and that's what's super important for me is fight everybody. Like them times, like, I don't know if you both have been through it, where after school, the guy who's stronger than you has said, "Oh yeah, me and you after school," right? That was Usyk to AJ. Usyk is way better than AJ, and AJ is a boxing history. AJ knows, he's not dumb. He knows Usyk is way better than him. Right, but to fight that guy twice, right, for me, takes a lot of bollocks, bro. And again, like, when it's all said and done, AJ will be an all-timer for boxing, right, for people that really know boxing, and for Brits as well.
Yeah, perfectly well said. And there's too many times where I've had that where over some stupid shit in school says you and me after school. Yeah, but
you and me after school, and you get those butterflies in your stomach, bro. Yeah, fuck it, all that. Come on. Yeah.
But no, that's perfectly well said. And and the profile as well, because how big Francis is in terms of his star power, knocking him out clean like that, it improved his following as well. His kind of his brand, his PR, his stock, everything kind of went through the roof after that night. And we saw kind of a shift where last year they were saying, oh, he should retire after the Franklin fight, he's not going to do anything. And then to now where he could beat Fury, he could beat Usyk again. Some people even saying he could beat Usyk. So there's that. Dapo says, and I want to get your thoughts on it, Aham. Fury hit him properly. What does that say about him?
Oh man, I'll be honest. That Fury fight, I think the most clear thing in that fight was Fury's legs were just gone. Like if you'll make as good as Francis Ngannou did for himself in that fight, if Francis Ngannou's fundamentals look solid against someone like Tyson Fury, who's supposed to be this all-round complete boxer, then we have to have conversations. But I think Fury's legs are gone. So like we'll see what happens against Usyk. But in general, I don't think Fury has the power. Like what you're saying. I don't think Fury has the power. Like for example, the top 3, top 4, actually, let's say the top 3 punchers in the division that they have. Let's say Wilder, AJ, and Zhang. I don't think he doesn't have the same level of power behind his punches in those 3, quite clearly. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how he turns up against Usyk because he's had a long preparation for that.
Yeah, and Dap also says Fury's abuse to his body is catching up to him.
You can't disagree.
But look, when we do the whole Fury Usyk preview, which we'll probably do on the bank holiday of May, so May 6th, because obviously May 18th, around that time, we'll go into detail about what we think about the fight, because that Fury Usyk fight is going to be a very interesting fight to kind of dissect as we come closer towards it. So we'll stick with March just for a bit. So obviously on that card as well, you had Parker versus Zhang, and I think it was a fight that on paper we kind of thought, yeah, it's going to be a great fight. That was the 2 top 10 heavyweights. Zhang can really hit hard. Parker's put in a good performance against Deontay Wilder, but it was a fight that I kind of thought was a bit lackluster. What was your thoughts on that fight?
After like the round, I think it was the 7th, 8th round. I haven't watched it back, but I think the 7th, 8th round, I think that's when, like, obviously Zhang gassed and Parker was happy just to stat pad rounds, to be honest. I think even in the last round, I don't even think he threw a punch. I think Zhang, I don't think he threw a punch. So I think it was pretty obvious what was going to happen this fight. Like, if Zhang doesn't get him out of there before the 5th round, no, not before, like around, let's say around 5, 6, if he doesn't get him out of there, then Parker's gonna take most of the rounds and win the fight by decision. So I think he knocked him down twice, but he didn't show enough. I think as I said, I think before, if Zhang had any sort of conditioning, he would have won that fight. But it is what it is. That's the, what do you call it? The trade-off that he has with all this weight, all this power that he has, all this weight that he puts on. He relies on that power to get him through, but that means he has to get them out of there early. So it would be interesting to see what happens if he fought Wilder, because both of them, not the best condition, not the best when you take it deep, not the most well-rounded boxers. And to be fair to Wilder, he does have a chin, so it'll be interesting if they do fight. I don't know what's going to happen, but in terms of Joseph Parker, good for him, man. Good for him. He's rebuilt himself quite a bit compared to the last few years, where kind of became a bit more less relevant in the division.
Yeah.
Now he's a contender again, and he's doing well. Obviously, with Parker what he is. He doesn't have the most power, but he has good fundamentals, good on the back foot, and he has very good conditioning. So he will last the majority of the rounds, and he will be competitive at the very least. Obviously, for example, when he fought guys like Dillian Whyte, obviously he lost the fight, but at the end he was very, very close to getting him out of there. So and obviously AJ didn't knock him out, so he went the distance with him. So I'm just glad he's rebuilt himself, and we'll see what happens after.
Yeah. Speaking of, because you mentioned him, he made his comeback in March, Dillian Whyte, after popping for in the build up to the AJ rematch. He didn't get, so from what I know about the whole situation is he never got issued with a formal ban. When the drugs test happened and he obviously popped, the event got called off because obviously they're not going to let their AJ fight someone that's on PEDs. But there was no formal ban. After that, it was all kind of radio silence. And then out of nowhere, like at the start of the month, the Texas Commission, which I didn't know they were involved in any way, they somehow put themselves getting involved in it. Said he was cleared. They did an investigation. It's about taking supplements, which I find to be a load of rubbish, because where did they come from? Why did they get involved? And also, it's like it just seemed all weird. And then he had his comeback fight against Christian Hammer in March, the end of March, the middle of March, in April, in some random kind of castle venue type thing in Ireland. What are your thoughts on White kind of popping and then now coming back to the sport?
I don't know what he's gonna do, because to be honest, at the same time, he hasn't fought for a while. I mean, obviously he fought recently. I didn't watch it. Didn't even know it was televised. Like if it was, yeah, I don't even know if it was. But Before his ban, even I saw a more demotivated, Dillian White. I didn't see that edge. He's never been a guy with great movement, great power. Like, he has power, but he's not a person with like great movement, great footwork. He has decent enough stamina, but he's never. But towards the end, before the ban, like he looked like he was checked out. So, like, looking for the last paydays, etc. So let's see if he even gets those opportunities. We'll see. But I don't know how his period of reflection was like. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. But I think he's someone who's on the way down, and not really going to have much of an impact on the division.
Yeah, same. When I saw his fight against Franklin and how he struggled that fight, how he just eked by, I thought, yeah, he's finished. And obviously the performance against Tyson Fury was very bad. Luckily, it was Ramadan during that time, like this time, and I was praying, so I didn't have to watch that fight, because that was actually quite a rubbish performance put in from him. And so I've never got that feeling that, yeah, like you said, that he's got that sort of competitive edge back. It just seems like now he's back for kind of one or two more paydays, and then they'll see where they go. But I think if Sky are smart, they'll probably pick him up and go, look, we've got heavyweights on our roster. We've got Lawrence Okoli, for example. We've got guys that Martin Bakoli as well. We want you to fight. Let's build these fights up, because I don't know if he can get himself into that kind of Saudi mix. He might do, but it definitely won't be with the likes of AJ or Fury or Usyk or any of those big guys. Even Wilder won't be with those type of guys. It'll be kind of a lesser opponent. It could be even they might even try to do Joe Joyce. I think that would be a good fight for Joe Joyce if he fights Dillian White. So, but yeah, the whole drug situation is just, boxing always finds a way to make itself look bad, and this is another case, along with Conor Benn. This is another case of how it kind of didn't do it properly, and they've made it sort of look very bad, because when a casual, someone that doesn't look into the sport properly, you go, well, I thought that guy popped for drugs, yet he's back again. How? And then how do you kind of explain that in a way that doesn't make boxing bad? It does make boxing bad, no matter how you slice and dice it. So that's a bit kind of disappointing. But the future is near. The next quarter, so this has been the first quarter review. The next quarter is going to be amazing. I mean, we've got April. The next quarter always counts as the 3 months, isn't it? So April, May, and June. We've got 3 undisputed world title fights in Inoue versus Neri. You've got Canelo versus Munguia. You've got
Fury
versus Usyk in 1 month. In the period of 3 weeks, you've got those. Then you've got on June the 1st, Artur Beterbiev taking on Bivol. So much to look forward to. What are you looking forward to in the next kind of?
I think Inoue is always box office. Enjoy watching him, etc. We've done streams here. Like, I don't come on much often, but we've done streams here on Inoue. So obviously looking forward to watching him. Obviously Fury Usyk, don't really need to speak much about that. We'll see what happens. And I think Beterbiev Bivol, something I never thought would happen, is going to happen. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to those fights. I think the Canelo fight against Munguia, I think it's mostly because I have a feeling how that fight is going to go. So I'm not looking forward to as much, but it still should be competitive at least. So next good couple of months coming up.
Yeah, and like this quarter, I thought was a great quarter. It wasn't over the top, but it was quite good for boxing. And even on when we call it smaller hall shows, you've seen it. There were good fights, like for example Fabio Wardley versus Clark. You've got Joshua Buatsi and Azeez. Again, these were on the domestic level. We've had some great fights to watch. We also had Dalton Smith versus Zepeda, great fight to watch. Like very well competitively matched fight. We then had also Nathan Heaney versus Brad Pauls, but this next quarter kind of seems like the global quarter, because you've got 4 undisputed title fights, 3 in May and 1 in June. Then you've also got in that June card, which we're going to go into detail. We're doing a whole video pod on it. The rumor of the 5v5 card, which you've got the likes of Hamza Shiraz on it. You've got Hrgovic versus Dubois on it, Zhang versus Wilder. So there's so much to look forward to on that. And then you also got, going forward into June as well, Gervonta Davis versus Tank Martin. and on the same card, Benavidez versus Gvozdyk. I mean, those fights are amazing. So it does seem like there's more to look forward to in the future, isn't it? And that boxing this year has definitely surpassed anything that we've had last year. Like, yeah, it's just way better this year that we've got. It's just consistently been better. We haven't had many gaps. We've had, on both scales, great fights to look forward to. Was there any thoughts that you had on the kind of how the year's been and how it's going?
I think last year, all the good fights happened at once. I think it was more like within like a 2-3 month period, and then you had a bit of a break, and then you had what happened in December. But I think the blockbuster fights, I think if you're gonna look at blockbuster, I think last year was good, was really good. Obviously we had Tan Garcia, we had Lomachenko, Haney, we had what was it? Spence Crawford, obviously as well. So yeah, we had big fights last year. I think this year is more consistent. You're getting everything a couple of months later, you're getting something big. So like even this year, it's not been like amazing. It's still been a really solid start to the year. And now you've got consistent. Now you get into the real part of the year during the summer, and then I think whatever happens in the summer, we could obviously have some. We got some fighters that haven't really fought so far. You're looking at your Spence, you're looking at your Crawford, for example, how the fallout is going to go there. Obviously, we wanted to see Canelo, Benavidez, maybe whatever happens in the Munguia fight. Let's see what happens later on in the year as well. So, we'll see what happens. But I think this year, it's looking more consistent than last year.
Yeah, 100%. It's a great time to be a boxing fan. It's a great time to be involved with the sport, and that's why we keep bringing you these pods, because there's so much to talk about and there's so much to cover. Our next pod, hopefully, is on Saturday. We're going to go over the topic of, is Anthony Joshua back? And I want to get a sort of full spectrum kind of analysis on that. I want to see everyone's takes. So obviously, we're going to try to have a big panel. We're going to try to get a lot of people giving their thoughts, but we also want to get your thoughts as well. So make sure that if you have any thoughts, any questions, leave them in the comments. Or if you don't want to leave them in comments, if you're not watching on YouTube, you can follow us on Twitter, and you can at us at Ringside Fracas, and you can send us your questions. You can send us your thoughts as well. And we will, like always, we always read them out on the pod, because we're kind of a podcast that we want to get everyone else's view as well. This is a fans kind of podcast. We want to get everyone's view. But yeah, thank you for joining me, Arham, and thank you to everyone else. Thank you to everyone else for joining. If you're watching on YouTube, or if you have a YouTube account, please click subscribe, like, share the video with some of your friends if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, again, please share these pods to friends that you know will be interested in boxing, because again, we want to get their take. We want to listen to what they want to hear, but we also, it's very interesting to them. Also, give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And remember to follow us on Twitter as well, and on Instagram as well, at Ringside Fracas. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on Saturday. Take care.